The vivo X200 Pro is already one of the best camera phones you can get these days, but the vivo X200 Ultra has even better camera sensors. Instead of a 24mm lens, it has a 35mm. That 35mm gives you more natural proportions compared to a typical 24mm lens. They also both have a crazy large telephoto sensor that is 3.7 times zoom or 85mm. The X200 Ultra's telephoto f-stop is 2.3 instead of 2.7, which means you get a slightly more light, but the difference is not huge, especially in daylight. The ultrawide sensor on the Ultra is much larger than the Pro's, and that's another difference between them. The Ultra's ultrawide sensor is the same size as the main one, while the Pro has a normal sized ultrawide sensor like any other conventional flagship phone. Another difference between them is that the Pro is using MediaTek Dimensity, while the chipset on the Ultra is a Snapdragon. But they also have a lot of similarities, like the design or the fact that they both have a 6000 mAh battery with the new battery technology, which means there is no sacrifice in weight. They are both IP69 rated, nice. They both have a gorgeous 12-bit panel, but the resolution of the Ultra is higher. It is around a centimeter longer, and it also weighs a few grams more. Also, it has a larger camera bump. The vivo X200 Ultra also has a camera shutter button, which you can use to zoom into the subject, shift exposure, and things like that. Emo, I teach computer science and programming at university. Photography is my side hustle, and I bought both of these phones with my own money. They are both Chinese variants. I'm going to deep dive into the camera, battery life, and performance comparison of these two phones. Starting with the camera, I noticed the camera app is different on the Ultra and Pro. The layout is different, and also there are some modes missing on the Pro version. There are also some subtle differences. For example, on the Pro, by default you see the zoom level number, but on the Ultra you see the focal length instead, which gives a more professional look. Frankly, I am personally much more comfortable with it because 50mm or 85mm has a meaning to me, but 2 times or 3 times zoom does not. Starting with the telephoto lens, they both have an 85mm telephoto lens. The aperture of the Ultra is wider, so there is more light coming into the sensor. I also did notice that even though both phones are on Zeiss Natural, the color science is slightly different. The Ultra is a tad warmer and a bit more contrasty. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing, just thought to point it out. Here, you can see the difference very clearly, where the Ultra picture is more contrasty, despite the fact that the shutter speed and ISO are the same. The shadows are more lifted on Tanya's face on the Pro in comparison. Or here you can see the face is more vivid and colors are definitely more saturated on the Ultra compared to the Pro, despite the fact that I'm not in the vivid mode. Also, the image on the Ultra is a little bit softer. I assume they toned down the sharpening slightly on the Ultra to give it a more DSLR vibe. But overall, the photos from the telephoto lens on both of them are simply magical. I absolutely adore the quality of the images coming straight out of the camera without the need of process them further. As I mentioned, the telephoto sensor is large, which means you get enough background blur, but you can of course use portrait mode if you want to. The Ultra has more options in portrait mode and more color profiles, but for the sake of comparison, I'm now shooting with a standard on both of them. Here, I'm using the vintage color profile and portrait mode, and you can see the look is slightly different between the two. Also, to show how crazy the zoom of the camera can be, look at the tower at the end of this wide shot. We can zoom all the way up to 2300mm focal length, and we get this shot, which is insane. Or here, I saw a couple having a great performance in front of the car's Kirche.
Oh my god. This is so insane. Look at this.
You mean the dance or the...
No, the zoom.
What they are? Ah, okay.
The main sensor on the Ultra is better than the Pro in one important aspect. It is 35mm instead of 24mm. 35mm is a very long natural looking focal length. Here, I'm shooting this video in log with the main lens on the Ultra, and as you can see, Tanya's face looks natural and not distorted. If we want to do the same result with the Pro, we have to zoom 1.5 times, which creates a problem. The video quality drops a bit since we are cropping the video. And if we use the 24mm on the Pro, then it is simply too wide. Here you can see how the main lens looks when I'm standing at the same distance from Tanya. The Ultra looks closer to the subject. If you want to have a wide shot on the Ultra, you have to use the ultra-wide lens. Here, you notice that the vivo X200 Ultra has less bokeh and blurred background, since the ultra-wide lens is f2 instead of f1.6. To be able to capture wide videos and photos, you can use the wide lens on the Ultra, but the caveat is that the ultra-wide lens does not bring in as much light. Even though the sensor size is the same as the main one, the f-stop is higher. Here, you can see the side-by-side comparison of the Ultra's ultra-wide versus the Pro's main lens. And you probably notice that the Ultra is not picking up as much light. But if we compare apples to apples, the ultra-wide lens on the Ultra is definitely of higher quality compared to the Pros. That said, it is not that easy to spot the difference, to be honest with you. Especially during daylight, they are both doing a great job capturing the scene, and in terms of dynamic range, they are very similar. Interestingly, the colors are here not exactly the same. The Ultra has a lot of orange and yellow, while the Pro leans more towards magenta. But the closer we get to sunset, the more the difference shows itself on the ultra-wide lens. And if we zoom here, you can see that the vivo X200 Ultra captured a sharper image due to having a larger ultra-wide sensor. Talking about the color science, they both have the three main color profiles on Vivo phones, which are Zeiss Natural, Zeiss Vivid, and Textured. For reference, this is how the skin tone of Tanya looks on a Sony Cinema camera, which is fairly accurate. Textured is an interesting profile that makes everything more contrasty, as you can see here. I sometimes use it to give a dramatic effect. The Vivid, in my humble opinion, is too vivid. I generally try to avoid it, especially when I want to take portrait pictures. Zeiss Natural is my favorite profile, and it is one of the most balanced color profile in any phone I've ever tested. But the Ultra has two other profiles. One is black and white, which is a really nice profile, and I had fun using it. The other one is a film emulation profile that reminds me of a color science profile of Fuji cameras. These last two profiles are missing on the Pro model. And that last color profile is something really worth thinking about if you want to do a straight photography and are looking to buy a phone camera. The photos coming out of the vivo X200 Ultra with the film emulation profile look amazing. The colors are of course not realistic, but that's the whole point. The other mode that they both have is the street photography mode, in case you're into that like me. The default preset is slightly different though. The Ultra is a bit more contrasty and vivid. The Pro raises the shadows and adds more background blur, but they both create great pictures. Also thanks to the two nice young ladies for letting us take their pictures. You can also of course use the telephoto lens to take macro shots. The default processing is different on them. The Pro adds more background blur, which of course is artificial. The Pro also adds a bit more contrast sometimes to the macro shots, but again, they are both great. For night photography, the Ultra should have an edge, but frankly, I don't necessarily see it in this shot that I took. On the ultra-wide lens, it is obvious that the photo is better on the Ultra. Also, I feel the proportions are nicer and less skewed. Of course, the vivo X200 Ultra appears closer because of the focal length of 35mm instead of 24mm. By the way, I'm going to publish a camera comparison of the vivo X200 Ultra versus other flagship phones next week, so subscribe to not miss that video. We have on the left side the vivo X200 Ultra, on the right side we have the vivo X200 Pro. Is there any difference in the selfie quality? Not really.
No.
For performance, the vivo X200 Ultra is running the Snapdragon 8 Elite, while the Pro is running the Dimensity 9400. I wouldn't say they are extremely different in terms of thermals and raw output, and my experience is that they are very close this year. In Geekbench, the Ultra got around 9300 for multi-core, while the Pro got 8300. For testing the graphic unit and gaming performance, I ran the Wildlife Extreme test. Here, the Ultra got a better score again, which was a bit surprising. They are both running the latest software and are set to the performance mode. The Ultra got 40 frames per second, while the Pro got 36. For battery life, they both have a 6000 mAh battery with the new battery technology. So it means the phones are not heavy because of the high capacity. They have different chipsets, but in real life, I didn't feel any difference between them, neither in battery life, during thermals or heating. For example, by the end of the whole day of photography, videography, and other tests in this video on Wi-Fi, the X200 Ultra was at 61%, while the Pro was at 60%. If you enjoyed this video, you can watch the comparison of the X200 Ultra versus iPhone, Galaxy, and Pixel next. Thanks for tuning in to TechMo, and I will see you in the next one.